Game of Thrones ended its run this year after 8 seasons, wrapping up the stories of various characters, including Melisandre, the Red Priestess, played by Carice van Houten. Now, first off, Carice, Melisandre was a morally complicated character, to say the least.
Say that again, yeah.
She burned an innocent child at the stake on one hand, but she also resurrected Jon Snow, and she helped the North beat the Night King. Do you think she was ultimately a force for good? Like, what do you think of her morally in the end?
I mean, I was very confused myself throughout the whole thing sometimes. But I always felt like, I mean, I always said that I was sort of in it for the greater good, but my methods weren't per se very charming always. But I don't think she was ever out for how do you say that? It was not about her own personal gain, I don't think, because in the end you see that the most important thing is telling Arya to fucking kill the Night King, to save all of us. So it was never about her, and I think she always was aware of the fact that it was not her having magical powers. She actually says it at some point to Stannis, like, it's not me, I'm just a vessel, like I'm nothing special really, it's the Lord of Light, that's who I work with.
And the big episode where Melisandre finally kind of reaches her destiny, the Long Nights, this giant battle episode. What was it like to shoot that? How long did it take to shoot? There's so many things going on in that episode.
The very last one.
Yeah, the Long Night where Melisandre.
Yeah, well, I wasn't part of most of that. I've only had slivers of it, and that was already quite intense. So I cannot imagine how the rest of the crew and cast must have felt throughout those 11 weeks of night shoots. But it was the first time that I really felt like, oh, this is really bigger than life. It's almost like real, like everything around me looks so real. There's tons of people, and there's fires, and there's, big, like it felt like we were in a real castle somewhere, and it was all, it was all just make believe. I really felt really small, and I thought I have to remember this, even though I'm fucking freezing. I have to remember doing something that I will never ever, experience again in my life. To be on a set of this scale. It was quite amazing. And then, of course, I see that episode as well as a sort of a big bombastic symphony that has beautiful dynamic, and then it's at the end, the last piano notes is Melisandre walking away, and I think that's sort of the ending of a very exciting episode, and I was so grateful and so happy with that elegant ending.
What was the last scene that you shot as Melisandre, and what was it like to kind of say goodbye to that character after having played her for these years?
The last scene was burning the trenches, and that was with a big green screen, so it wasn't very romantic or anything. And also because it was such an intense scene for me as Melisandre to make it happen, to do those praises and to ask the Lord of Light to help me. That's where I felt like the stakes were so high for the characters and for everyone else. So it was a very intense scene to do, and it was mixed with my own emotions of, it being my last scene, and saying goodbye has never been my favorite thing in the world. So it was also, it was quite a loaded day, you could say. So a lot of tension had to come out after I'd done that scene, and I just started crying like a baby, and I didn't really see that coming. I just was so overwhelmed by emotion. I just couldn't stop crying.
The episode ends with Melisandre kind of walking off and sort of accepting her own death and her own fate at that point. What did you think about that sort of send off for the character when you read it, and was it what you expected for this character, over the years having played her?
Well, I mean, I knew I had it coming. I really knew I had it coming just because of my scene with Varys and the season before. So I didn't know how, and I remember reading it, and I just really felt like I had goosebumps. I just really thought, they did it so elegantly. And it was exactly how I pictured it, and an even more emotional effect. Even when I watched it, I got emotional about my own, of my own act, not my own acting, but just the yeah, the placement of the scene and the whole episode and yeah.
And how much season by season did you know about where Melisandre's story was going as you were playing it? Obviously there was much in the books already, but by the time we got to these last seasons, there was no more source material from the finished books. So did you
Well,
know?
no, we're always sort of. I've tried so many times. I've tried to come in from all sorts of angles to try to get something out of them, but they didn't want to. The more seasons we got into, the less they said. It felt like. So I just at some point I just gave up. I was like, I'll see it on TV. I don't know what's going on.
And what was it like to watch that whole episode in the finished product? As you said, Melisandre is a sliver of so much that's going on in that episode. So what was it like to kind of see the whole finished product?
Oh, it was amazing. You read it on paper and you can imagine that they have the skills to make it work and the budget. but then to actually see it coming alive. I just loved it, and the fact that it was just the episode before was sort of a bit quiet and sort of preparing, and there was a lot of sort of more intellectual kind of episode, and then the third one was just so physical, and it was really like at some point that battle had to come, and sometimes all you have to do is fight. There's no time for talk. There's just you have to survive, and I just thought that was really powerful in that episode. And then to be the last, again, like the piano notes in the symphony. I was amazing. Yeah.
And had you read any of the books before you originally joined the show? And if not, does it make you want to read the books?
Well, yes, if I could read, a book a day, and if I had time, and if I had, if I had time, I'm very curious because, I'm sure that the base of it all is so much more layered and rich, and I'm hugely fascinated by George R.R. Martin. So I'm sure there's so much to find in those books. I'm a small child. That's my excuse. I can hardly read the newspaper, let alone I don't know how many books are this big, thick.
And when you joined the show, it was popular from the beginning, but obviously it's grown season by season to be this incredibly huge phenomenon around the world. When you first joined the cast, did you ever imagine kind of what the show would become in terms of how the fans would respond?
No way. No, I had no idea. I really had no idea. Who could have known? I mean, it's unheard of, the popularity it has, and I mean, I was aware of the fact that the writing was exceptionally good, and the characters were very complex, and of course, the fact that Ned Stark dies in season 1 was such a huge event, and made it immediately clear what we were gonna watch. So nobody's safe. It's like life. You can be a good person, doesn't mean that you're gonna survive. It's like. Yeah, it was very strong, I thought, that first season. It just lured you in. And then, yeah, once you're in it, you can't stop.
And what is have you gotten a lot of fan response for your role in the show, for playing Melisandre, who of course is someone sometimes you love to hate, or sometimes does have heroic moments?
Oh, I mean, I've had death threats towards my character. I've had marriage proposals. I've had people screaming at me, crying in the streets. Yeah, weird. but amazing. I think the thing that's so amazing about this show, that it has, in this time where we're all sort of so disconnected, I feel sometimes, and we're all, so digital, and the fact that there's something that has connected so many different people all over the world. It's just, that's my favorite thing about it all. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, I think.
And the way the show was sort of, the story was told for several years, especially the first 6 or so seasons. The characters were splintered off, doing their own things and their own separate storylines. Was there anyone ever who, when watching the show, you wished you could have crossed paths with, or wished you could have worked with more?
So many. I mean, I would have loved to have scenes with Cersei. I'm just so curious what those two women would be together. What kind of dynamic that would be, what kind of energy that would bring. And I don't know, Samuel Tarly, it would have been a fun scene, I think. This is one of my favorite characters. And Joffrey. But unfortunately, that never happened. I don't think it will ever happen.
Well, yeah, so many characters die on the show before you get a chance. Although, perhaps Melisandre could have resurrected them.
Yeah, good point. There's only so much I can do,
You mentioned
a lot of energy to resurrect. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you probably only have so many of those in you.
Exactly.
You mentioned Sam being one of your favorite characters on the show. Did you have an opinion on who would get the Iron Throne? I mean, Sam seemed unlikely, but Bran ended up getting it. But did you ever think like, oh, I think this would be a good choice, or that would be a good choice, or were you just sort of like, let the writers kind of?
I sort of gave up on just speculating. I just really wanted to be surprised, and I was, and so I never really had my own theory, to be honest. No, but it was a very unexpected ending, which I liked. Yeah.
And so much changed for Melisandre over the course of the series. At first she's working with Stannis, played by Stephen Delane, and you shared many of your scenes with him, and in that storyline for so long. And then, what was it like when his storyline ended, when he was killed off, and sort of Melisandre went on sort of this other adventure with Jon Snow and all?
Well, apart from the fact that I was sad that Stephen was leaving, I was very excited to be around other actors again, and to be, sitting in the green room with Samuel Tarly, and with Jon Snow, and with Christopher, what's his name, Tormund, and Gwendolyn, and it was very exciting for me, because most of my time was with Stephen and Liam, And as much as I love them, I really, really adore that combination as well. It was very refreshing to be around the young kids.
And now that it's all over, what do you think will be the thing you miss the most about Game of Thrones now that it's all come to an end?
I guess Liam Cunningham sort of uh, abusing me, abusing me in a nice way. You know, he just yeah, he teased me to death, and and sort of to, I mean, he's such a goofball. Um, so I think, yeah, being around my co-actors and being in the makeup truck, and just all that stuff, just it really felt like a bit of a family over this last 7 years. So yeah, that is a bit sad. And the hair, we'll miss the hair. This look, this is the stuff that we have to deal with now. Dead. And it's, yeah, so it's I missed that wig.
You didn't take it with you when you left?
No, I mean, what am I going to do with it, really?
Well, I want to congratulate you on the show, Carice, and thank you for your time. Thank you for joining
Of
me, and
course.
thanks.
My
I want
pleasure.
to thank. And I want to thank everyone watching. So please click like and subscribe, and check out more of our Emmy season interviews in our Emmy interviews playlist, and make your predictions at goldderby.com. Where Carice is a contender for Best Drama Guest Actress. Thank you again,
Thank
Carice, for
you.
joining me.
You too.